the rise of manufacturing ERP platforms, which ERP software has the best AI features, and how Epicor is doubling down on AI. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 222 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 222. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian and Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this episode.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. And for those that don't know, this is a podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. It's the tech agnostic view of the world of technology and enterprise tech. And my name's Eric Kimberling, as I mentioned, CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. We help clients with digital strategy, software selection, implementation planning, and the actual implementation of various ERP and digital technologies. So thanks for joining us here today. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And you go to that same website and see all the past episodes we've done as well. Transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you prefer at that same website. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. And today's episode is going to be a fun one. We're going to talk a lot about, technology, because we always do. But in particular, we're going to get into some social media questions that we've received recently. We'll get into some newsworthy topics, one being how Epicor is doubling down on AI and sustainability, and then Klarna's AI strategy. We'll talk a bit about that here in the opening segments. And then later in the show, we'll have Raj from a company called Rootstock. He's going to be joining us to talk about manufacturing ERP platforms and the difference between platforms versus traditional monolithic ERP systems and how manufacturers can benefit from that. And then later in the show, we are going to talk about which ERP systems have the best AI features. So if you're looking for AI capabilities and you're also looking for an ERP system, we want to share with you that ranking of the top systems that have the best AI features, in our opinion and experience so far as we stand here in 2025. So before we jump into all this great stuff we're going to get to here today, let's start with some social media questions, Darian.
Okay, so yeah, the first one today is, what are companies saying about ERP options now that many are looking at cloud repatriation and private clouds?
Yeah, repatriation, I think is what you meant to say there. That's okay. Repetition, repatriation.
I don't know.
It's a hard word to say. So what was the question again? What are companies doing as part of or why
what are they saying about the ERP options?
Yeah, so I think because of a lot of the populism and nationalism movements in politics right now in many countries, including the US and other countries, as well as just government regulations and data privacy laws, that's causing a lot of organizations to think about how they can repatriate some of their cloud ERP systems back to their home countries. And that's essentially what it's referring to is rather than having it hosted elsewhere in another country, now we're talking about whatever your home country is, having cloud solutions that will host the data and the applications there. And for some of you listening, it's a requirement or a regulation. For some of you less listening, it may be a preference. And so you just have to know, what vendors offer you that option, or if they don't, look at potential hyperscalers or other cloud providers that are potentially third party that could host your solution in your home country. So I think that is a movement that we're seeing, and it does limit you to some degree in terms of which systems you can use, because not every ERP provider is going to have the cloud infrastructure to host the solution in whatever country you prefer, including your home country. So you've got to do your research and due diligence as you're evaluating cloud providers. But it does it does limit or it narrows down the options you have when you're looking at cloud ERP systems.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What an interesting question for sure. Our next one today is, would you say AI solves the necessity of customizing in ERP systems, or does it just add another layer of complexity?
That's a great question. Something I've been wondering a lot about because I think it's is touching on the whole battle between AI and ERP to be the system of innovation. We've talked a lot on this podcast about system of record and how an ERP system is oftentimes just essentially a glorified database that hosts all your information, your transactional info, et cetera. And then ERP providers try to build, the easiest user interface on top of that to be able to access the data and interact with the data and whatnot. So you take that and then you look at AI and how AI is making it so much easier from a user interface perspective or user experience to access this data. And it does make me wonder if ERP systems are going to be relegated to just be a back office system of record, glorified database sort of thing in the future. And AI will end up being the real quote unquote ERP system or the front facing employee customer facing technology of choice. I don't know where we're going to land on that. And I know ERP providers are trying to mitigate that risk by investing themselves in AI technologies and capabilities to maybe head that off at the pass. But I do wonder if AI is going to sort of take over what used to be that user interface and what used to be, the role of ERP systems historically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super interesting. And this question kind of ties into what our first newsworthy topic of the day is. It's actually about Epicor, an ERP vendor, and how they're doubling down on AI and sustainability. And so they just had their conference recently, and they said that one thing they're focused on is AI innovation. And together with sustainability, with that, they're positioning themselves as not just an ERP provider, but also as a smarter, greener alternative for industrial and supply chain focused companies. On the AI side, they rolled out new capabilities in Epicor Prism, a network of vertical AI agents that help you with everything from onboarding to parts and supplier recommendations. These agents work together to reduce internal back and forth, and they claim it could cut communication time by up to 40%. They also upgraded their Grow AI, which is their machine learning engine, to help automate modeling across operational data, all powered by Grow Data Platform. And on the sustainability front, they introduced something called Carbon Cost Rollup, a tool that treats CO2 emissions like a currency, making it easier to track and report on scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions inside your costing systems. So the message is clear. Epicor is trying to be the ERP partner that helps you work smarter and cleaner without sacrificing profitability. Eric, you were at this conference, so I'm interested to see your kind of insights to what you heard there and if there's anything else that we're kind of missing here. But how does Epicor's vertical of AI agent approach compared to what we're seeing from other players in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how all of these vendors are investing so heavily in AI, and Epicor is no exception there. And at the conference, I know certainly that they themselves, Epicor employees, were very excited about Prism, but the customers were too. There's a lot of existing Epicor customers there. In fact, in the sessions I presented at, I would ask the question, how many of you are already on Epicor? How many of you are in the process of migrating? And most of them, when I asked the question, most of them are already on a pretty modern version of Epicor. So they were at the conference just trying to learn and educate themselves about what's new and what capabilities are coming that they might be able to take advantage of. And that was something that a lot of customers were talking about is being able to start using these agents in Prism. They also talked about another product called, I think it was called Smart. I think it was Smart something. I can't remember. It is something to do with, I believe it's production planning. Kind of an AI enabled production plan. I might have that wrong, but it was some, I think it was called Smart something. It was an AI tool that a customer actually mentioned to me, and I heard it from them before I had heard it, at the conference from Epicor. But they were talking about how they had just implemented that solution. So I think, this is the first conference I've been to, the first industry or vendor conference I've been to so far, where I actually feel like I got some good use cases and conversations with customers, because you always hear the vendors talking about it and they're always going to hype it up and whatever, and that's fine. But I always want to hear, what are the customers doing? Are they actually using this stuff? Are they just checking it out? But I feel like this is the first conference and the first time in this whole evolution of ERP and AI where you feel like customers are actually starting to adopt it and use it. So it's pretty exciting to see the rubber meet the road, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, what should mid-market companies be thinking about before implementing AI into their supply chain operations?
I think it's really the same answer I'd give for implementing any sort of technology, and just understand what it is you're trying to do. Um, Having said that, I mean, there's a lot of experimentation and testing and brainstorming and a lot of creative ways you could be using these AI agents and other, AI tools. But you can easily get overwhelmed with it. So I think the key is to test and try stuff out, but then quickly hone in on the things that are adding the most value, and start small with those, and then scale them out, and really make sure it's deliberate, make sure it's focused on, somehow aligned with your broader corporate strategy and objectives. Because I'm sure you could find, hundreds of possible uses of AI throughout any organization, but only a small subset of those might actually add real value that's supporting what your overall strategy and goals are. So I would start small, out of experiment, but also make sure you've got alignment and focus with what it is you're trying to accomplish as an organization.
Sure. Yeah. And on the sustainability topic as well, that they were talking about, when they talked about treating CO2 like a cost, is that a clever kind of like accounting strategy, or is it a real step towards sustainable operations, or how do you kind of see that playing out for companies?
Well, I think, they're sort of borrowing from the playbook of global governments that are pushing the ESG agenda. You had the carbon credits that you could trade, and sort of a stock exchange or a currency based limited supply and demand sort of approach that some governments are undertaking. You've got others that are forced, like in the EU now. Your organizations that are publicly traded in the EU are forced to report on their ESG results, and so governments are kind of heading that direction throughout the world. And so I think, having that mindset and that mentality baked into Epicor is going to help them, especially with global clients as well. Maybe not so much in the US, it's not as big of a deal, or it's not as tightly regulated yet, although I think we're headed there, as it is in the EU. But I think it's definitely going to help them in the short term globally, even long term, even more so.
Yeah. And do you think that we'll start to see more ERP vendors merge the AI and ESG tools like Epicor just did?
Probably. I mean, yeah, I think they probably will, just because, especially those that are serious about going after the European market. And again, eventually in the US, I think it'll be a requirement, or more of a mainstream focus. So I think we're a little behind the EU on that, but here because you and I are both in the US, but EU is probably ahead of us in that regard. So I think they will, simply because that's where much of the world is headed right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, super interesting for sure. Some cool announcements from Epicor, but we're going to switch gears here and talk about an AI strategy that the fintech giant Carlana is using. So they're kind of making some different headlines with their aggressive push into AI. They've been replacing human roles with AI, particularly customer service, where their AI assistant now handles tasks equivalent to 800 full-time employees, up from 700 last year. This move has significantly reduced their workforce from 5,000 to 3,800, with plans to cut further to around 2,000 people. However, recent reports suggest a shift. CEO Sebastian, I'm going to butcher his last name. It's kind of like mine. It's like Chwialkowski. I don't know. I know it ends with a ski. Sorry.
An Eastern European sounding name. That was sorts.
Yeah, exactly. I should know that, saying that what my last name is, but I don't. I'm sorry. Acknowledge.
It took me about 6 months to figure out how to say your name, so I understand if you can't say his on the first try.
Fair. So their CEO acknowledged that their cost cutting via AI might have gone too far. Carlana is now pivoting into a new model, hiring a small cohort of remote agents in an Uber type setup to complete their AI systems. Despite this, the company maintains their AI first strategy. And experts like Tara Higginson from Infotech Research Group emphasizes that while AI can enhance customer service, the human touch is irreplaceable. She notes that over resilience or over reliance on automation can lead to decreased customer satisfaction, with many customers preferring human interaction, especially when resolving complex issues. So, Eric, with this, is Carlana's approach to a blueprint for a future of customer service that is focused on AI a tale of kind of over automation?
Yeah, it could be. And it's an interesting case study because you do run that risk that we over automate or we over leverage AI to where people are craving that human touch even more. So it could be, I think the pendulum will probably swing back a little bit, but I think we're so far away from really seeing mass enterprise adoption of AI that we haven't seen it yet. But I think that's probably what will happen, just knowing how humans are in the tech space. Is you're probably going to overreach on the tech stuff, and then people are going to realize, oh wait, it's cool, it's great, AI that is, but if we add some human dimension or human components to the secret sauce of our customer service and our overall business combined with AI, that's going to be the real powerful secret sauce that's harder to replicate, because it's at some point the AI stuff's going to become commoditized and anyone can do it. So which is good, it'll lower barriers to entry, and companies will be able to, even small companies will be able to leverage AI and stuff like that, which is really cool. But the real competitive advantage will probably come from the ones that figure out that right balance between technology and the human side of things, because at the end of the day, we want human interaction to some degree. Just like, you think about this is a bit older school, but 20 years ago when utility companies and phone companies started rolling out the IVR, the voice recognition stuff, where you basically get the annoying menu options at the beginning of a phone call. Instead of just getting a hold of someone, you're having to choose 10 different options to get to the right person, and then you still end up getting the wrong person. That's an example of how that was cool technology at the time. It saved a lot of call center costs for these big customer service based companies, but a lot of them overreached and overdid it on that. And so a lot of them went back to, hey, let's create more of a personal touch, because that's different. The technology stuff anyone can do, but if we can provide really good service in a way the others can't, then that's going to give us a more of a distinct edge. So I think that's probably what will happen, is you'll sort of, we're going full steam ahead with AI now. We'll probably overreach a bit, then we'll come back a little bit and settle somewhere in the middle with more human touch to it as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with that, is there specific areas of customer service where AI excels and others where human agents are kind of indispensable?
Yeah, I think a simple information search, like, tell me what my last payment was on my account, or tell me what the balance on my account is. That's easy. You don't necessarily need to talk to anyone because it's a straightforward yes or no, black or white sort of answer. But when it gets into something more complex, like, what are my options with, what are my different wireless options if I'm a telco carrier? What are my different Wi-Fi options? That might be something where I want to talk to someone. I might get the basic stuff through a chatbot or an AI agent. They might give me, my three main options, but then I might want to talk to someone, ask some additional follow-up questions. And then some people are still going to prefer the AI agents from a customer service perspective. But I think the key is to give them options and give them a quick, easy off-ramp to talk to someone live versus talking to an AI agent. So I think that flexibility is key, because you don't want to force someone to talk to someone if they don't want to, because A, it's not a good customer experience for them, but B, it costs you a lot of money to have a human interacting if an AI agent can do it, and if the person wants an AI agent. So I think that's really the key, is to give people flexibility and choice on that.
Yeah. And is there a way that companies can measure the success of AI integration beyond just cost savings in these kinds of situations?
Yeah, I think you have to look at, that's where it's important to really keep a close pulse on your customers' rating, your customer satisfaction ratings. Certainly, at the end of the day, every company's out there to make a profit. So that matters, obviously, your revenue and your profit, all that stuff, traditional financial metrics. But that's a historic rear view mirror look of what already happened. When you look at customer service scores, and if you see that customer service is going up or down, or customer loyalty is going up or down, that's a leading indicator that you can affect now that will ultimately affect your downstream profitability. So I think really looking at, things like net promoter scores or customer service ratings, customer satisfaction ratings, I should say, those are all really good leading indicators to get ahead of it and understand how your tech initiatives might be impacting your customer service for better or for worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting, but some good topics today. I'm excited though to get into our guest conversation of the day.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll continue talking about AI in some capacity with our guest. We're going to have Raj from Rootstock on the show. And if you don't know who Rootstock is or who Raj is, Rootstock is a platform. It's an ERP software platform that was built on Salesforce. So many of you might think of Salesforce as a CRM system, which it is, but it's also a platform that a lot of third-party developers will use to create extensions or additional uses of Salesforce in specific areas. And Rootstock is an example of a vendor and company that took Salesforce and extended it into manufacturing capabilities using that platform. So reason we want him on the show, though, is because we want to talk about what's this whole platform thing. How does that relate to traditional off-the-shelf ERP software? And how do I find the option that's the best for me, whether I'm a manufacturer or any other type of organization? So we're going to chat with Raj about all that and more. And then later in the show, we'll continue the AI thread by talking about the ERP vendors that we think have the best AI features, at least right now, as we stand in May of 2025. That could change by June of 2025. But as of right now, this is the snapshot in time of where we think the ERP vendors stand with AI. So got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Things you wanna feel, I'll give you anything to feel it coming. Do you wake up on your own? I wonder when.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Transformation Ground Control and also the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. And at Third Stage, we work with a lot of manufacturing companies, and we know that manufacturing companies are difficult to run. And the last thing you need is for your ERP system to make your jobs even more difficult. And if you follow me for any period of time, you know I like to talk about alternatives to some of the big ERP software providers because there's a lot of really good options out there in the marketplace. One of those options is CTech ERP, which is a practical all-in-one business system that's built specifically for manufacturers. And what's great about this is that it can be used out of the box to run and support any manufacturing company, but you can also tailor it to fit your way of doing business. It's web native and agile, so you can run your shop floor from a laptop, tablet, or phone. It's packed with important features like real-time traceability, scheduling, inventory control, quality management, bunch of other features that are all ready to use from the time you choose the software. And if you need to change the software, the beauty is you can do it in a low-code, no-code environment. So there's no code required. You don't have to hire a developer to make changes to tailor the software to fit your manufacturing operations. Now, what I like about CTech ERP and vendors like this and systems like this is that it's really a disruption to what I consider a stagnant and bloated industry. There's a lot of really expensive ERP systems out there, and CTech is one that's more affordable. It's got transparent pricing, and you get a SaaS software solution for only $50 per user per month. So it's just good to know what you're going to pay for the software. There's not a lot of upfront cost, and you're just paying per user per month, only $50, which is really hard to find. And implementations typically happen pretty quickly. They happen in weeks, not months. And they have a fully dedicated support team to help you put out fires or help you get through the implementation more successfully. So CTech ERP is an ERP system that's built for proactive manufacturers who want to get things done. You can learn more by going to ctecherp.com, and that is spelled CETECERP.com. Hope this helps and hope you check them out.
And I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Little pieces of the nothing that fall.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 222. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success with digital strategy, software selection, and implementation related services. So be sure to check us out at thirdstage-consulting.com. I'm excited for our guest. This is the first time we've had him on this podcast, but he's someone I've known in the industry for quite some time, and I've known of this company for quite some time. So I thought he'd be the perfect guest to have on the show to talk about this concept of ERP platforms. That's something we've talked a lot about on this podcast. I talk a lot about it on my YouTube channel, but I wanted to have a guest on here to really dive into it in a little bit more detail to understand the pros and cons and the whole movement towards ERP platforms versus the traditional off-the-shelf ERP softwares. Sort of what are the nuances and the differences? What are your options? How do you find the one that's best for you? All that stuff and more is what we want to cover here today. So with all that being said, Raj, thanks for joining us here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself to get started. Tell us about yourself and tell us about Rootstock, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm actually, you asked the first question where we're joining from. I'm joining from the Bay Area in California, where it's a cold 48 degrees Celsius. And for those of the guys joining from the West Coast, Eric didn't tell you this, but we can see you too. And I know you're in your jammies. No, we're kidding. Of course not. We can't see you. I work for a company called Rootstock Software, Eric, as you mentioned. Rootstock is the natively built ERP on the Salesforce platform. We've been in business about 15 years. We're super excited about the potential of what the platforms can actually do, especially as it relates to Salesforce. And especially for Rootstock, I'm the Chief Product and Marketing Officer, which means I get this unique position of, selling what we build and building what we sell, and bringing those two things together. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. This is the first time we've had a chance to sit down and do an interview like this. I guess I'm going to ask you in a second here to tell us a little bit about Rootstock, but maybe even before I ask you that, can you tell us, you just mentioned the word platform, you mentioned Salesforce, you mentioned Rootstock. Tell us just basic 101, what is a platform? Like how is that different than a traditional ERP system?
Well, so that's a great question, right? So when you think about what makes a platform versus what makes a traditional, ERP application, the big difference is a platform tends to be extensible right from the grounds up, meaning it's almost like a bunch of building blocks that you can assemble together to create exactly what you need, as opposed to, having a pre-built sort of building or apartment that you walk into where everything is configured and set up for you. And there's a lot of customization that needs to happen to tailor it to what you need. So a platform gives the flexibility to mix and match pieces as you need there, right? So if you think about the Salesforce platform in particular, it is a modern, cutting-edge cloud platform. That's just there, right? And then when you build on top of that, you get all the benefits about the $5-6 billion of R&D spending that Salesforce has done. So I'm talking about everything to do with componentization. I'm talking everything to do with, integration with business process flows, which makes it configurable. It's all the data and AI now that's coming in. All of that become available. And then there's this beautiful thing called the App Exchange, where there's hundreds and thousands of providers. So the mix and match to do exactly what you need versus a monolithic stack that's been created, like 40 years ago, 50 years ago in traditional ERPs, that's the big difference here, Eric.
Right. So Rootstock has essentially taken what most people think of when they think of Salesforce, they think of CRM. I mean, when I think Salesforce, I think CRM. I don't necessarily think manufacturing. Those are two very different things. But what Rootstock has done then is take the Salesforce platform and extend it and add manufacturing capabilities. Is that a fair?
You got it. It's absolutely fair. And in fact, it's interesting to me that there are so few people who actually are even aware that there's an ERP on the Salesforce platform, right? And this is exactly why it's like CRM is synonymous with Salesforce right now, because they really dominate that market. At the same time, if you remember, one of the first things that the genius of Mark Benioff was deciding to really not build another vertical on top of Salesforce like ERP, but really go horizontal with the platform story that enabled, I don't know how many thousands of software companies that got constructed on the Salesforce platform. We are one of the largest managed packages on the Salesforce platform, Eric. That's the other big difference to remember, is ERP is not a small extension. It is a major complement. In fact, that's what runs the business. And when you put together ERP and CRM together on the same cloud platform, there's an incredible amount of synergy for a manufacturer, right? Because you get demand, you get supply, you get capacity all in one platform. And that's the notion of what we call the signal chain, right? Which I'm going to talk about in a second as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Makes total sense. So, what tell you? So you talked a little bit about what you do at Rootstock. You talked a little bit about what Rootstock is and how it's an extension of the Salesforce cloud platform. What else makes the Rootstock platform unique in the ERP space?
So let's talk about when was the last ERP built, right? I think it most likely was built in the last century. And Eric, I'd like to equate this to cars that were designed in the 1900s versus cars that gets designed now. And it's the Tesla versus the traditional automaker kind of analogy, right? When you look at traditional automakers, they have a certain set of constraints. There was technology constraints. Things were not as modular as before. Cloud was literally not there in the last century. What if you could think about how you reimagine ERP in the 21st century, right? What choices would you make? How would you do this differently? How do you approach the design point and so on and so forth? So for us, that's where the big sort of challenger to the big ERP comes in, right? When I look at the big ERPs that's been around for a long time, well, guess what? You are the victim of the choices you made when you started this whole thing, and everything is incrementalism from that point on. Versus what we were able to do is to say, okay, let's look at what a modern ERP needs. How do we make it modular? How do we make this in a way that does away with customizations altogether, which is really the bane of why ERP implementations fail. And you know this, right? I mean, you talk about ERP failures, quite a bit, and you're the expert at this more than me. What I do know is two things, right? Rootstock is defined and designed from the grounds up to be different from the traditional ERPs by being modular. We want to make sure that our customers kind of sense that, and they can do implementations really quickly and very flexibly, because you want to use business processes first versus code first, right? And that's the big change that we ended up doing. And now there's another thing that's come up right now, Eric, which is, shockingly, the world of AI, right? AI needs all of data to be clean, integrated, all in one place. And guess what? When you have CRM and ERP in the same sort of instance, it automatically lends ourselves to creating the best of the AI models to be contextually relevant and so on with a user. Those are all the things that Rootstock is doing, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And yet it's all in the cloud too. That's a big part of it, of AI adoption too, or AI leveraging the power of AI. Having it all in the cloud is super powerful.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what trends are you seeing in cloud ERP adoption? Speaking of cloud, what trends are you seeing in terms of cloud adoption, particularly in manufacturing and supply chain intensive industries?
Manufacturing is one of the most conservative industries that are out there. Just historically speaking, I work across multiple verticals before as well. Manufacturers marry for life. They're not your Tinder users, okay? They're not, they're not flipping every 3 months to see, oh, is there a new ERP out there that I could implement? No, this thing is like a heart surgery, right? Hopefully you get it once in your life and you never want to touch it again. So this is what we found, Eric, here is manufacturing is very thoughtful and considerate about which ERP that they want to go and implement and select. But once it's selected, they typically tend to hold it for at least for a decade. I mean, we have customers, who are switching to Rootstock after 2 decades. I mean, the joke is, the first time they picked the ERP, they were unmarried, and now their son is going to college, right? I mean, it does take them that long before they make the change. Now, we do a survey of manufacturers. We do it twice in a year. The first survey is called manufacturing technology selection. That happens at the beginning of the year. And towards the end of the year, we do AI in manufacturing, just to separate the focus on that. And what we found, Eric, was 51% of manufacturers are planning to increase their spend on enterprise software, which includes obviously ERP. Why? Because you want to be more digitally connected, you want to be resilient, you want to be much more competitive. The green screens are kind of not working right now. Look at the volatility in the market today, right? With tariffs being the latest of it, and we went through the pandemic. It's very hard to do the same agility if you have a 20-year-old system. It just doesn't work. I mean, there's jokes where the person who customized your ERP literally died, right? There's no one else in the company who actually knows how to use the system. So they won't change until they're pushed to it. But there is a very conservative view, but it's coming. The wave is coming off the change, which is one thing we're seeing. The last stat that I thought was super interesting is 82% of manufacturers, they are planning to invest in AI. That's a ridiculously high number, right? I mean, AI is truly one of those incremental budget items that may not have been what you started with, but that is something that they're considering what to do. Now, it's another thing that vendors, and I include us in that, right? We end up hyping this whole thing, and we create this scenario where we redefine existing technologies and automation into AI, which is a little unfair. But nevertheless, there is clearly an interest in manufacturing AI.
Yeah. So even despite their conservatism or their match or their investments for life and their tendency to focus on one platform, they're still moving towards cloud.
It is, right? I mean, look at the most transformational technology of our lifetimes right now, Eric. This is what we're seeing right now. It's hard for you to not be impressed when you go to something like ChatGPT and you say, write me a song for Third Stage Consulting, and it writes it for you. And then you say, write me a song for Third Stage Consulting in the style of Snoop Dogg, and it does that too. So, and this is the consumer use case. I'm not saying this is the enterprise use case, but it's hard for someone to not want to implement something like that in ERP as well. It's hard for someone to not demand more of unstructured data, leveraging unstructured data, leveraging voice-based conversations, and so on, and really translate that into a structured sort of format, and so on and so forth.
Right. Now, playing devil's advocate here, we've got a comment here on YouTube. It says AI is BS. So I'm not sure. Not sure what that person means by that, but I'd love to hear an elaboration on why.
Tell me how you really feel.
Exactly. Well, you and I were talking, though, in all seriousness, you and I were talking before we went live here today about how there is a dark side to AI. AI is all, there's a lot of opportunity. We're all excited about it, except for this person on YouTube, apparently.
Exactly right. But it can be, Eric, like, is the funny part is, you said it correctly. Look, it depends on the use cases, right? If you try to implement AI into the wrong set of use cases, most of AI impact can be into two buckets, right? There's deterministic and there's probabilistic. Deterministic is when you want exact results. This is what ERPs have been known for, right? You don't want your books to be, hallucinating, right? I want my balance sheet to actually tally. I don't want my balance sheet to be hallucinated by an AI. So clearly that's not a great use case where you want deterministic answers. But probabilistic is where I would like to get a sense of where this could be. This could be in demand planning and forecasting kind of scenarios. This could be, I want to get a better estimate of lead time optimization from my suppliers. I want to know when raw materials are due. So there's so many unknowns. There's weather. There's like the Suez Canal thing that somebody didn't know how to drive the ship and got wedged in sideways. There's all these kinds of things that ends up happening, right? Now, we got to pick what the right use case is. And to our sort of conversation earlier, people are using AI for cheating, right? So students are using AI. And this is the interesting educational sort of the segue a little bit here. Can you trust homework anymore, right? Because kids are using AI for writing their essays and everything like that. So why is that real? versus in the enterprise context, right? Are you going to redefine automation as AI? Are you just going to say, hey, I have a flow that actually automates a few steps? Does that become AI for you? No, it's not. So AI's BS is if you are not clear about what you want to do with it. Of course, if you are familiar with the technology and you look at the application and you look at the labeling, so even as vendors, like, for us, like as ISV partners, we need to be responsible in terms of what we want customers to actually do with it. If we hype this too much and we bring things that are not real, well, our customers are very smart. They look at it and go, that is BS, because you're trying to tell me something that I always did. And we just want to be cautious about that.
Yeah. Makes total sense. And just like any technological decision, there's trade-offs, there's risks, and we'll actually get to some of those trade-offs, pros and cons of platform versus more traditional ERP systems here in a moment. But first, I want to just reach out or look to the audience here. Some comments. Darian, thank you for joining on LinkedIn. She says, good morning. Rihan from Pakistan says, good evening to all from Pakistan. Thank you for joining here this evening. And then Pedro joining from Mexico says, good morning from Mexico. So thank you for being here, all of you. Here is a question that I want to pull up. I thought it was a really good question here. It was from Rihan. Where did it go? Oh, actually it's from Muhammad on YouTube. So Muhammad on YouTube says, please, can you also say about or talk about the future of ERP development? And I guess I want to broaden that a little bit because it's a great point and it's something to think about. I think a lot of times you talked about in your introduction and your explanation of the difference between ERP platforms versus sort of the monolithic ERP model.
Yep.
One of the advantages of the platform model is more flexibility and that sort of thing. But how do you see that? How do you see that evolving in the future? Because a lot of people think development, customization, it's a bad word. You shouldn't do it. There's a school of thought that says you should go with a monolithic ERP system, out of the box, vanilla, best practices, all that stuff. So how do you see this, not this conflict, but this alternative to the monolithic ERP systems? How do you see that developing or evolving in the future?
It's a great question and something that we have debated internally on what it actually means. So let's go back to Eric to why did we evolve into this best practices kind of situation, right? There's two explanations for this. We can say, well, let's take the Jeffrey Moore core versus context, focus on your core and don't try and, sort of extend your ERP to the context, because most businesses, whether you like it or not, are pretty plain vanilla. They have similar ways of, order to cash, similar ways of procure to pay, similar ways of plan to produce, right? Which is all the processes that you need in an ERP. Or it could very well be that I built a monolithic system that actually is getting a lot of bad press, because when people try to extend it to our users, this thing breaks and it creates heavy negative feedback. So I'm going to work the PR system to focus and convince everybody that plain vanilla is only the best way to go for you, right? I mean, this are two interpretations of this. Now, what we found is the middle ground is the right answer. The middle ground is we will give you the base platform that does most of your functionality for you. But what monoliths have to do with big ERPs, with customization, you can actually modularize this and you can extend that with everything that you need. Like, for example, let's say, you're not, you're a system, you're an engineer to order sort of manufacturer, and you need product lifecycle management to work with ERP. Guess what? You drop a PLM system that works with ERP and you're great with that. Or you are a regulated industry, a medical device manufacturer, and what you need more than anything else is for FDA approvals, and you want to do compliance tracking and so on. Guess what? Along with ERP, you can drop a module for compliance tracking. An ETO manufacturer is very different from a med device manufacturer. So the choice that you had before was, I have one monolithic ERP that I have to customize in one direction or the other, and the base of, hey, just use plain vanilla is not going to be enough. So that's where we see the difference today. But going forward, Eric, which is the future of, it's very clear the future of AI is going to be, future of ERP is going to be AI. There's no way around it. Because, look, I think anecdotally, I don't have the source where I saw this. 67% of enterprise data is stored in AI today, and if you stored in enterprise ERP today. If you want an AI model to get built on top of it, you need ERP, which has the lion's share of data to feed your AI models to make it much more specific to that. Why would you not consider having a clean, modern AI system that actually helps you build all of these things? So to me, the actionability, the decision making, in context sort of processing is what we need with the future of ERP, which is going to be very different from the way we are interacting with ERP till date. I think there's going to be a significant departure.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and that's exciting to think about too. Also want to say hello to David on YouTube joining from Malta. I've always wanted to go to Malta. I've never been. Have you been
Malta
there?
sounds nice. I think
does,
it's
especially-
zero tax too, by the way, if I remember.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
So
David, I
last
hope
week-
you're spending all the money you're saving with your taxes. I'm sure you're having fun in Malta.
and hopefully the weather's great too, better than what you're experiencing in San Francisco today.
It's only California.
And then I'm going to try to pronounce this name from Ukraine, Okaha, I believe it is. And I apologize if I butchered that name. Joining from Ukraine, textile production, Edelvika in Ukraine. So thank you for joining today. And here's a comment from Shankarshan on YouTube. I've seen your channel grow so much in the past 5 years. Bravo. Well, thanks for watching for 5 years. You're one of the original fans. If you've been watching that long and you've seen it grow in 5 years. Here's a question from, where is it? Edward. It's sort of building on something you just mentioned a moment ago. Let me change this so it doesn't cover your face there, Raj. There we go. Okay, so Edward says, good question on the ERP for AI development. What needs to happen in ERP development to prepare for AI? You started to talk a little bit about this a moment ago when you were talking about getting clean data, getting it all in one place, ideally in the cloud. What else do we need to do as we think about, if we're a manufacturer and we're thinking about AI, what else do we need to do in the ERP space to get ready for AI?
I think we should talk about it from a slightly the other end of it, because I'm a product guy, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that needs to happen for AI to work, but really, what does it look like when it's finished, right? So let's paint that picture first, right? So to me, AI has three significant characteristics that's got to be, especially for ERP. Number one, it's got to be touchless. What do I mean by that? Think about the entire paradigm of how we interact with ERP all these years, right? There's screens, there's clicks, and there's all these things that you have to get through to actually get to the job that you need to do. Most of training is UI navigation. I mean, when we finally have an AI that you can talk to, that understands you perfectly, is that training still valid anymore? I don't know. Right? It's like, why are we insisting on touch as the only paradigm of interacting with AI? Right? I think about AI as a super intelligent being that's sitting in the middle, that has access to all of your demand, all of your capacity, all of your supply. When we do MRP runs, right? All these exceptions that come in. Well, guess what? Your ERP knows it all. But you have siloed that to make it about users and modules and per seat pricing and all the nonsense that's come in along the way. So you've really thrown away the value of what ERP can be, right? So touchless is super, super important. Second is atomic. So this goes to talk to the modularity of all of it. Not everyone needs all information. Okay, that's a reality. If you're an employee working in purchasing, you don't really care about what's happening, outside of that department. You certainly don't care about what's happening in the shop floor. That's fine, but in the context of purchasing, there is a level of intelligence that needs to happen as well. The third is agentic, right? We talked about agents and agentic architectures and so on and so forth. What does that mean? It means that, look, if there is a way for an agent to do the task a human could do, an agent will do it. And you have to start with that particular philosophy right from the grounds up to say, what can agents do that's better? For example, I'll give you a perfect example that we can talk about. Cleanliness of data. Why does a human being need to clean the data? Why can't an agent do it? There's enough heuristics to actually consistently go look at, hey, you know what? This thing doesn't look right. I'm going to go fix it by what I think. I have a customer record that doesn't have a zip code, for example, right? All of these things are a self-reinforcing loop, because the data cleanliness, as you know, is going to become super important. And the biggest thing, Eric, which is kind of like blew my mind when I thought about it, we spent 40 to 50 years in building ERP and putting data in little text boxes, right? Whatever that is, right? Whether it's like, how much quantity and UOM, and, we had all of those things that we actually put in. But today we're saying the biggest value of data is actually in the text fields. It's in the descriptions, because that's where the value has shifted right now. And all current ERPs are still stuck in that old paradigm where they're like, oh, you got to type it in like one field at a time. No, I don't want to type it in. I want to use this. I want to use my phone. I want to talk to it. I want ERP to figure out everything, what fields it goes into, and I want it to tell me what I need to do next. I do not want to waste my time. That's the future, right? That's what AI is going to do for ERP going forward.
Right. Yeah, that's exciting. It's exciting to think about that. I'm here with Raj from Rootstock. We're talking about manufacturing ERP platforms, some of the pros and cons, and how to choose what's right for you. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 222. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Darian Chwialkowski, and I'm here with Raj. We're talking about manufacturing ERP platforms and how to choose what's best for you. Here's a really great question. We could honestly spend the entire conversation talking about this one question, but I'm going to pull it up anyway. I'm going to hide, make sure I can show most of the question here. This is from Pedro on LinkedIn. Pedro says, I believe one of the main challenges with ERP systems is ensuring they reach all levels of the organization, from sensors and machines to systems and platforms.
Yep.
Often companies invest in an ERP but fail to connect it to the full automation ecosystem, also known as level 0. The problem lies in how closed off most ERPs tend to be when it comes to integrating with other systems. Without full connectivity, the ERP's potential value remains limited. So what are your thoughts there? And we're kind of getting into a whole nother topic here with sensors and IoT, 3, 4.0, 5.0, tying this all together, all the shop floor information. How do platforms help that potentially?
Exactly. No, I think you said it exactly right. Look, here's the thing. It depends on the manufacturer, or in this case, the customer themselves, if you're talking to, enterprises tend to love IoT because IoT tends to be a way for them to save on personnel costs. You don't need to have as many field service techs anymore for repair. The machine can self-diagnose, send out signals, and there's a lot of value within that. There's particular industries like utilities, etc., that actually tend to love these kinds of signal-based things. When was the last time you had somebody from your favorite power utility company come home to read your meter, right? We've gotten past that. So that's something that's happened in our practical day-to-day lives. It is also not correct to say that every manufacturer at every size needs this. And look, Rootstock in particular, we deal with mid-market manufacturers where IoT is interesting, but for them, they have typically a smaller set of operations where the complexity isn't that high. At the same time, the value of IoT is in customer-focused asset management. What I mean by that is more than automating their own factory floors, right? Which, of course, you need some level of that. What if there's a phone home, dial home capability of every machinery, every asset I've installed at a customer, and use that as a revenue event, right? Something is breaking, something is about to run out. We have a customer at Rootstock who basically sells to the food service industry. So think about the last time you went to Taco Bell. You look like a Taco Bell guy, Eric. Are you?
No, I'm not. I haven't eaten there in like 20 years, but
okay. So Taco Bell, just for the record, right, in the back office, they have a massive cooker, right? It cooks like a ton of meat at the same time, right? It's an industrial size cooker. So we have a customer that manufactures these kinds of things. And what they have inside the machine is a spatula, that keeps turning it around to make sure that things are cooked evenly and so on. The spatula wears out. Okay. And imagine if the spatula wore out at the middle of a busy day, and it could take days, to actually replace it and so on and so forth. That's loss of revenue. And IoT at that point has got to basically identify that, the effectiveness of the spatula is coming down. And, why can't we proactively send someone to actually go in and replace it? So this is a good example of how the level 0, the whole IoT layer and the signal layer comes together with ERP. It gets the idea that something is going wrong. It ends up, catching the part, doing the technician dispatch, right? And, recognize it in this book. So there's an upsell that gets, locked as well. So there's all these things can come in, but it's for the right use case and for the right size company is what I'd say.
Right. Yeah. Lots of opportunity. You just got to right size it and make sure it fits, what you need and what you're looking for. Here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, how big of a challenge do you see in cleaning, structuring, and labeling that ERP data for AI use? Is this where IT teams are getting stuck, or is it more of a cultural and organizational issue?
It's an interesting question that, yes, cleaning and labeling ERP data is important, especially in the context of AI. Really, if you were to sort of go back a little, Darian, the question is, why are we in this mess? Like, why is it that the case is like this, right? Typically, what ends up happening is, ERP tends to be not a fun tool to use. In other words, it's something you must do because otherwise the job doesn't get done, right? You must do. So there's a lot of data that sometimes are due to poor implementations. There's mandatory fields that don't use, business needs change. You don't want to go back and change all of that stuff. When was the last time that the tool that you're using, you said, let me do a comprehensive audit and hide all the fields that I don't use anymore? You don't do that. You let that be. And poor users, they're like, God dang it, I can't go to the next screen unless I type in some junk. So ASDF, this is what you see in many of those fields. That's what's fine because you used ERP as a transactional entity. But all of a sudden, you want to use it as a system of intelligence because you're sticking AI on top of it and you're feeding it junk data. So there's got to be this massive cleanup that you have to do before you can actually get to a point of intelligence, because it's this, believe it or not, AI is garbage in, garbage out, just like any other computer software system that we have seen in the last 50 years. So it is cultural in one sense, to your point. are we responsive as leaders to our people to make sure that we're giving them the most cutting edge technology and the most interesting things? Or are we going to be making a selection in a centralized way, dumping it and saying it's on you, and the only time I'm realizing it is, shucks, I need like an AI strategy and I need to go back and fix the data now. So it's a little bit of both is what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you there. Here's a comment from Patrick, a follow-up to that. Patrick on LinkedIn says, in the age of automation and AI, technology debt for manufacturers that don't think to change old systems will grow rapidly in the next few years.
Absolutely. And Patrick, Eric and I just spoke about that a while ago, that there are systems where the original developer has passed away. That there's no other information that's currently in the system to actually go back and change these things. And this is how conservative our industry is in manufacturing. And you almost need to start to think about the next 10 to 15 years. Just take a look at what's happening in the market today, right? Do we know what the impact of tariffs is going to be? No, we don't. I mean, it's like it'll sound like CNN. We need to have a running ticker that says, here's what we're charging for each of the countries.
Right.
But what does it mean to ERP? An ERP was never built, Eric, to assume that input costs are variable. Or even if they were variable, it was not in the frequency that it's happening right now, because it's creating havoc, right, into planners, right? Like, how do you plan for a business where you have no idea what the input costs are? And the supply chains are so globalized right now that it's impossible for you to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to certify that this thing does not have a China footprint. You don't know, right? I mean, this is not, possible just as a human planner. What we need to do is, this is where AI actually comes into play. This is where the probabilistic nature of what we think, do we think that this could have a China impact? Do we think this could be treated a little separately? Those are the things that manufacturers need. Again, going back to use cases, have real use cases that drive AI adoption. Not start with AI because you like ChatGPT and then you're trying to make it work in your enterprise. That's not going to fly.
Yeah. Makes total sense. And by the way, Patrick, the person that asked that question, he's part of an organization that's hosting a digital transformation conference in Poland in November. And the only reason I know that is because I'm speaking at it. So
nice.
if you're in anyone here from Eastern Europe or wants to be in Eastern Europe, in November, there's an event all about digital transformation in Poland. And you can ping Patrick if you see him on LinkedIn, or if you're on LinkedIn, you can find him there and follow him, or you can ping me and I can send you info on that conference if you're interested in that. That's good to see Patrick here. Want to keep going through the comments here. Bear with me one second. Mark is joining us from South Africa. We talked about how Malta sounds great right now. South Africa is my favorite country to visit. So I'm a little envious that Mark is joining us from South Africa. Thanks for being here today.
I haven't been, Eric. I'd love to go to South Africa someday.
It's amazing. I love it. It's been a while since I've been there, but it is a really pretty country, and the people and the food are amazing too. So I guess let me hide this here real quickly so I can go back to my questions here. Whoops, there we go. So what about when we think about flexibility and configurability, and especially for a mid-sized manufacturer? How important is that for a mid-sized manufacturer to have that sort of flexibility and configurability with their ERP technology?
Oh, it is absolutely critical. I think we've had several of our customers, talk to us about, we ask a question, why did you pick Rootstock? Like, why? And my sales team doesn't like that, but I do ask them, saying, tell me why you selected us, so we know what we're good at, and how do we continue to earn your business? How do we continue to invest in what that is? Eric, it comes down to basically saying, how can I get the most amount of productivity with the least amount of employees? So we have a customer of ours, and their IT leader was kind enough to come in and address our company. So they're like a global meat manufacturer. They import, hundreds of millions of pounds of beef into the US, and they have distribution and so on. They are one of the largest performing revenue units in the United States for this conglomerate, but at the same time, they only have 33 employees. Ultimately, what it means is, like, how can a tool or a technology help you get the productivity that you need from the business and make it easy? And you know what? They chose us because we were on the Salesforce platform, because we were modular. They were able to assemble bits and pieces that actually configured that business from an end-to-end perspective and reduce the total cost of ownership by 45% over 3 years. I mean, that's the value that we're talking about, right? Do you want this to be easy to use? Do you want it to be, cost effective? Do you want this to be modular and tailored to your business? And by the way, do you want to stand up and say, I'm running the most efficient business that I can? Guess what? That's what you end up getting. So you don't have an army of folks that you need. You don't need an army of consultants to come in and implement this stuff. I mean, that's what mid-market manufacturers have very little. First of all, they don't have the budgets, but they certainly don't have the inclination, because all of these are kind of recovering, right, from big ERP implementations, because they're like, oh my God, I remember when this SI backed up the bus and 32 kids got off, right, to actually help me implement ERP. So that's not what they want.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not, most organizations don't want that. And they realize it after the fact or as the project's underway.
Exactly right.
So when manufacturers or any sort of organization are evaluating potential platforms, whether it's a Salesforce / Rootstock platform or any other, what are some of the considerations? Like, what are some of the things they should think about as they're evaluating platforms?
Well, so there's 3 things that I'll say. Number 1 is integration. Number 2 is customization. Number 3 is user experience. Right? I'll boil it down to 3 things, because there's a lot of others, as you know, functional fit, et cetera, but it comes down to these things. Number 1, why is integration needed? Remember, every integration is a point of failure. I mean, literally, you can go to this because you have 2 things, and this is like trade between 2 countries, right? Anybody can tariff each other, and all of a sudden it's chaotic, right? Same thing with integration. You have APIs. One guy changes the API, the whole thing breaks, and you got to go back and say, what the hell? What happened over here? So every integration is a point of failure. So eliminate those as much as you can. Number 2, customization. Every point of customization is a point of failure. You may think it's great that my business cannot live without it, but you write code. Guess what? The guy that was really smart who wrote your code, he's gone. Okay. Right. And all of a sudden you're scrambling to, like, what the hell do I do now? I need somebody else that can help with this. And the other person is not good enough. He has a band-aid over it. It keeps breaking. You have to compensate with operations and throwing bodies at the problem. That's the usual stuff. So eliminate customizations, make it about business process flows, where a business analyst can do the job versus a technical sort of developer, right? Number 3 is UX. It keeps coming back to user experience. And this is where my personal belief is AI is going to be super helpful in eliminating the UI. So AI is going to be the new UI, as they were saying, right? So what is user experience? It's the ability to make it easy to use. And I don't want to confuse user experience with specific clicking on things and so on and so forth, right? Yes, that exists, but can you make it easy to use in the sense of using things like AI as a generational bridge between people who are retiring, who have all the knowledge, versus the new Gen Zs that are joining the workforce, right? I mean, Eric, we were talking about earlier, I have a daughter in her 20s, right? If I show her a traditional sort of big ERP to say, here, honey, you can go have at it, right? They'll run out of the room screaming, right? They can't imagine working with a tool like that. But that's the generation we have to design for.
Yeah. It doesn't even make sense to them. It's like a foreign language. It just doesn't resonate.
But that's the 2.1 million workforce jobs in manufacturing that are going unfulfilled. It's like, why is that? Like, what kind of environment are you creating when you take new employees in? You're going to show them to your green screen, really, like 40 years old, and say, go do that? guess what? These kids don't want to do it, Eric. They're unlike, I think it's a generational thing, right? If you try to show them old technology and say this is the only way of doing it, and I did it, and your dad did it, and your grandfather did this, and you have to do it, it's not going to work. So there's another change which is driven by demographics, if not just for technology.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that's a point that often gets overlooked or glossed over or just completely neglected. In that your ERP system and your core tech stack can have an impact on the types of employees you attract and retain. It's not just, okay, it's a tool to do our jobs. That's great. It's a tool to run the business, of course, but it's also a way to, look at, are we attracting the right people? Are we attracting younger people and people that we can groom and develop? Or are we just going to attract the same people that have been using the same outdated systems for 30 or 40 years or more?
And that's the choice that I guess we have to make here, right? If you say that the system is unchangeable and immovable and the people need to change, I think you're 20 years too late for that argument.
Yeah.
Right? That's the expectation shift that's happened with our workforces. Is workforces today are incredibly smart. I mean, they can multitask, and I like to think I have ADHD, right? Undiagnosed, right? But man, I got nothing on these kids who can have like 18 different applications they use at the same time. And there's awesome productivity and things over here, but you need to create an environment even within an ERP to make it easy for them to use. And it's not screens and training and all that wonderful stuff. I think the patience to tolerate, BS systems, like the guy mentioned so eloquently earlier,
Right.
I think it's very, very, very low.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just to sort of validate the point you were making earlier, that there is a school of thought that there's still a school of thought out there that says you shouldn't customize, you should leave the software as it is, use it out of the box, best practices, pre-configurations, all that stuff. Here's a comment from Perry as you were just giving that response. This was from Perry on LinkedIn. It says no customizations. And then the follow-up to that is, I think he was commenting on what you were just saying a moment ago about, the older generation still running the technology here. But this is the comment here from Perry is that is the reason we have 80-year-olds still maintaining mainframes within government departments.
Hey,
And
this is the opportunity lost for all of us, right? I wish I specialized in System 360 in IBM and I'm like the world's best expert because I have a job for life. This is the thing. You can be 80 years old and you can continue to work on mainframes. It just tells you that there's such a dependency. Technology, once they work, they're hardy things to kind of move off, which is why, even within the world of ERP, it's like, you talked about this becoming a heart surgery or brain surgery. You don't want to do it more than once. You tend to do it once and you tend to hang on. But the pace of change at which things are happening right now, all manufacturers must have an IT strategy. This is what our survey is telling us, right? This is not me wishfully thinking this. This is what they're saying. You know what? We put in stuff 2 decades ago. We're looking very, very long in the tooth now. We have to change. It's not an option anymore.
So what are some of the biggest challenges then when an organization is going to migrate from either a monolithic ERP system from 20 years ago, or even worse, a mainframe system from 40 or 50 years ago, moving from that to a cloud-based platform like a Salesforce or Rootstock? That's a big jump, and what are some of the biggest challenges they face when making that big jump?
So I'll tell you what, it's not software, it's not hardware, it's wetware, it's humans, it's brains, right? It's really change management is the number one thing that ends up happening. Look, we'd love to say all of the flaws is with the technology. And I think, Eric, you said this before too. It's like, look, the biggest failures come in because you don't know how to manage change. Human beings, we resist change. I'm comfortable doing what I did. Yes, a shitty system, it's 40 years old, but it works, right? I can make it happen. Now you're telling me I need to change my entire way of how I think, how I do at a human level. At a leadership level, the case for change is very clear. But have you invested in a change management program? Do you have a PMO, a governance office? Do you understand what the end state is going to look like? Can you anticipate the roadblocks and hurdles? Can you make it easy for your people to take change into bite-sized sort of pieces, if you will, to go through that. I'm telling you, that's the number one thing that we end up seeing is it's not that the technology is fantastic, but how are you going to continue to fund it? Or are you going to like take your foot off the gas because you made a selection and you're going to delegate it down? No, as executives, you have to be involved in this thing. You got to see this thing to completion. And most of the failures that end up happening is because either executive, like attention is, reset to something else. Somebody takes a foot off the pedal. They don't have a strong governance to keep things there. You don't have a good sense of phasing. I mean, these are all the things that consultants, Third Stage, I know does some of them, are wonderful at help. You need a third party to help you keep you on track. It's not just the vendor. So there's a triangle of success here, right? There is the customer, there is a ERP vendor like Rootstock, but there's also as a consultant who makes sure that you're being honest with all of this, and it's a neutral set of reflecting. When you have those ingredients, that's when it goes in. It's not anything else. Everything else, whether it's data, process, can be handled. That's not the problem.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And sure, the technology is a lot different. Sure, the back end of how you maintain it, how you change it, all that stuff. Yes, that's different, but it's not. The technology is actually a lot easier to use, but it doesn't make it easier to implement. And the reason it's not easier to implement is because of what you said. It's the people, it's the cultural change. This is a mindset shift for us. And, having flexibility that we didn't have before, it sounds great. And it is great in the long run, but in the short term, that creates turmoil and chaos and
personal anxiety, right? Like people are anxious, like, oh my God, do I need this? Do I need to change this? But that's what leaders do. You got to step in and say, here's why the promised land is going to be better for you. And here's how we're going to go. And this is going to be shitty, right? For this part of the journey, but stay with us and it's going to be great at the end of it. So the great leaders, you can point to, I'll flip it another way. We can point to failures and we can find common threads. But I'll tell you what, when you can found successes, I always found there are great leaders behind successful ERP implementations who have the vision for it. And there's a correlation between good leadership and successful ERP that I think is not explored enough, in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you need strong leadership. You can't, to your point, you can't just delegate it down the organization and hope for the best and assume it's going to be successful. No matter how good that team is that you're delegating to, it's not going to be successful unless you've got that strong leadership backing you behind it. Here's just a couple more comments, and then I've got a closing question here for you today, Raj. Perry says all boys to men have undiagnosed ADD, so that's good news for you. Good news for me too, because I think I have ADD. So we're not alone. It sounds like. Edward on LinkedIn says agreed. That's why older people that understand AI will be very valuable to the young generation. And then as a follow-up, Edward also asks, what tips do you have on guiding a company to test AI in a department within a manufacturer or any other organization?
This is an interesting question, right? You test AI in the area where you have the most amount of value. So first of all, ask yourself, what are you testing? Are you testing probabilistic use cases or deterministic use cases? Meaning, if you need probabilistic use cases, any LLM will do. You want an easy way for your sales guys to send an email to your customers looking at the current install base and what parts they need. Sure, you can use, Agentforce, which is being pushed by Salesforce as a core technology. We're investing a lot in that. Or you can go directly to OpenAI and write, through the platforms as well, right? Either way, there's ways to implement that. But then if you want deterministic, if you want deterministic, which is much more exacting, then you need to build your own AI models. This is where data quality and all of those things come in. For example, we use Einstein Discovery to create, specific models for lead time optimization. So I want to know for my MRP run, will the supplier deliver the raw materials on time? Each supplier delivers it slightly differently, but can I do a trend analysis that says, I think the supplier is not going to deliver, even though my ERP thinks it's going to come in 2 weeks. The reality is that consistently they've been delivering on, maybe 2 weeks late every single time. So if I can factor that into my MRP runs, then I have a much better way of actually doing it. So again, it depends on the use case, but please, for the organization, start with something easy. For God's sake, don't start with the most complicated use case to say, I'm going to change the heart of MRP to run. It doesn't work, right? Start with something easy, something peripheral, and work your way into the organization with the level of complexity as the muscle actually grows and you get familiar with the technology and results.
Yeah, it makes sense. So last question for you, Raj. Just as you look to where your place is in the ERP space and in the way you're developing the product, continuing to evolve the product at Rootstock, what's next for Rootstock? What's next for Rootstock, and how are you positioning the company to stay ahead in this ever-changing ERP, AI platform landscape?
We are looking at Rootstock ERP to not just become a system of record, which is kind of where everybody else is looking at, but become an in-context decisioning platform. What does it mean? It means that we want to think about the 80-20 rule, Eric, which we had 80% of the stuff were things that happen automatically with automation and so on, and 20% were exceptions. Now with AI, we can take the 80% off the 20% and automate that too. That's the next level of the efficiency that we're trying to squeeze for our manufacturers. So how does that happen? It happens in context. It cannot happen outside of the user, right? It has to be where the users are working. It's about agentic. It's about bringing together all these interesting elements to help you drive that. So that, to me, the decisioning platform, which is touchless, which is agentic and atomic, that's the future of ERP that we're building here at Rootstock.
All right, thank you, Raj. Great conversation, and thank you to the audience for the really good engagement and questions. Those were some really insightful questions. In fact, it's triggered some additional thoughts and takeaways that we're going to cover here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break and stick around because we're also going to talk about AI-enabled ERP systems. Which ERP systems have the best AI features? We're going to get to all that and more here in just a moment. But first, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say. Tell me, I've been waiting for so long to hear the truth.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I want to invite you to join me and other thought leaders in the digital transformation space to Stratosphere 2025. It's an annual conference we've hosted now for 7 years in a row. It's a great event. It's live in Denver, Colorado, but we're also offering it virtually via hybrid tickets. And we're going to have a lot of different speakers here, including myself as a keynote, as well as others that you may know from the industry. And this is a perfect conference if you're interested in any sort of digital transformation, including ERP and CRM and HCM. And actually, the theme for this year's session is AI and how AI is affecting all different types of digital transformation. But in addition to AI, we'll also talk about the fundamentals of digital transformation, including program management, evaluating the right software, digital strategy, change management, process improvement, all the things you need to know to make your project successful. It's also a great way to network and learn from others. So just being part of a community that is also like-minded and going through the same things you are, that's another value. And you can join, like I said, remotely, in person, and you can also buy VIP tickets if you'd like more exclusive access to me and others from the Third Stage team and other speakers that are going to be there. So I hope to see you soon. Check out my discount code below for discounted tickets. You can go to stratosphere2025.com for more information, including the full agenda, and I hope to see you there.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 222. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journey. So if you're early in your journey and you're just getting started on your digital transformation, or perhaps you're about to start one, perhaps you're midstream and you're struggling and you need some additional help, we can help you at whatever point you're at. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to brainstorm ideas on how we might be able to help you get things back on track or get them on track in the first place. I've included my contact information below, so feel free to reach out. So, Darian, we just had Raj on the show. We talked about platforms versus ERP systems. We talked a lot about AI and Internet of Things and other things that factor into all of this stuff, all these movements here, or all these trends in the industry. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great conversation. I mean, like you said, you guys covered a lot of different topics, from long-term platform commitments to AI readiness, data hygiene, all of those different things. But there's definitely a few different things that stood out to me that I want to get, Eric, your deeper take on them. One analogy kind of was early on in the conversation, and I thought it was pretty kind of smart or brilliant. It was manufacturers aren't Tinder users. They marry their ERP for life, and some are now just replacing systems they've implemented before their kids were born. So why do you think this loyalty persists so strongly? Is it mostly fear of disruption or a lack of change management maturity?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's fear of disruption. It's the fact that manufacturers generally are generally what's the word I'm looking for? Conservative, just in their cultures, largely because they've been a lot of them have been around for a long time. And you look at other industries like technology, or financial services, and there's just a lot more turnover or churn with companies. A lot of startups, a lot of new companies, up and coming, that sort of thing. Whereas in manufacturing, there are startups, but it's not nearly as common as the mature 50, 100-year-old manufacturing company that's been around forever. So that alone gives them a culture that's going to be less likely to want to change or to be as fast to change. But then the other thing too is just the complexity of manufacturers. Change is a lot harder, I think, for a manufacturing company than just a customer service based company, where the systems piece of it anyway is a lot more difficult because you've got to manage and tie together all these disparate parts of a supply chain in your manufacturing operations, your warehouse, transportation, logistics. All that stuff is just a lot to change, and it's a lot of integration. So ripping out a system and putting in a new one's a pretty big deal for any organization, but especially manufacturers. So I think those two things combined are the main reasons why it's so difficult to see change quickly in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess another kind of switching topics here, another thing that you guys talked about was, you spent 40 years putting data into rigid text boxes, and now the most valuable insights live in unstructured descriptions, and ERP hasn't caught up. with that, how do we make data readiness a strategic priority and not just an IT task buried under operational noise?
It's a good question. I think, it's true for any technology initiative. You don't want it to be just an IT thing or a CIO or IT director thing. You want the business to be involved. And so I think looking at what kind of data is out there and assessing and capturing and gathering that data, which could be spreadsheets, it could be paper, it could be in people's heads, having an initiative to where we gather and consolidate and augment all the data we have, that's a pretty big undertaking. And it's something that the business has to be involved with, because that's where the data is. That's where the knowledge is. So I think involving the business is the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last topic, I guess, was you guys acknowledged the vendor trap or hype trap, calling automation AI when it's really just a flow and customers can see through that. What is the vendor's responsibility here, and how can buyers spot the difference between a true AI valuable and rebranded features?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because AI is the big hot new buzzword, but machine learning and automation have been around for a long time. And so there are a lot of companies that are now just saying AI because that's what everyone knows and understands. They may not understand machine learning. That dimension of AI doesn't make as much sense to most people as just AI. So, but I think the key here is, honestly, it doesn't matter what you call it. I think the bigger thing is just assessing what the technology can do. And that's really the key, is to dig in and really see what it can do, not just have someone put it on a PowerPoint that, hey, we use AI or we use machine learning or whatever. Just make sure you see what it can do and make sure it fits your business. So whether you want to call it automation or AI doesn't really matter. And even if it is true AI, and that's what they're calling it, is true AI, even that doesn't matter if it doesn't meet your business needs. So I think just understanding what your needs and priorities are, and then assessing the technology the way it actually works, not the way they say it works, but the way it actually works via demos and use cases and things like that. That's the way you get to the bottom of, whether or not that emerging technology is going to work for you in the way you want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. But a great conversation overall. I thought it was really insightful.
Yeah. Thank you. I thought he did a great job, and he was a great guest to have. So we'll have to have him on again sometime. And we talked a lot about AI in that conversation. We want to continue talking about AI now and talk about some of the ERP vendors that are leading the charge, in our opinion, on AI adoption in terms of embedding AI within their system. So what we did is we've compiled a unscientific qualitative ranking, I guess you'd call it. It is a ranking, but it's based on just experience and qualitative knowledge. It's not based on any sort of science. So just to be 100% clear, you could argue this to death and you might win the argument here on who should be number one, who shouldn't, who did I miss in the top 10? And actually, I do want to hear from the audience what you think. Who did I miss? Who am I overrating, or who are we overrating in this video? But we're going to play this video where we talk about the top 10 ERP vendors in the context of their use of AI and baking AI into their systems. So I want to get your perspective on this too, but we'll play you this clip and we'll come back and talk about it here in a second. But this is the top 10 ranking of our view of which ERP vendors are best leveraging AI in their core systems. Odoo is one of the more popular up-and-coming ERP systems, especially in the small and mid-market. And Odoo is an open source provider of ERP technology, and they've invested fairly heavily in AI. And what I like about Odoo's use of AI is that it's bringing AI to small and mid-sized companies. So we think of things like order processing and closing the books and other basic functions that Odoo can handle as an enterprise software provider. They've invested heavily in AI, and they're automating a lot of those processes using AI. So it's a great option for you, especially if you're a small and mid-market company. And in fact, if you are a small and mid-market company, you might actually want to rank Odoo higher on your list. But with all that being said, that's enough to land Odoo at number 10 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 9 of our top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is a product called Rapid. And Rapid is actually a low-code software provider that's not really a traditional ERP provider in the way we may have thought about it historically. Instead, what Rapid focuses on is composable ERP. So it's microservices and really breaking down ERP technologies into smaller subsets and providing an integration and AI platform to pull together multiple technologies.
So this can be a great option, especially if you are not looking to necessarily rip out your back office ERP systems and you want to preserve some of the legacy systems you have, but you still want to take advantage of some of the AI capabilities of other software providers. Rapid might be a good option for you. Now, a couple other things to note about Rapid. One is the company was founded by Jan Bond, who, if you watch any of my content, you know that he's the founder of Bond Software. So he helped create the ERP software category as we know it today. And with this company, Rapid, I feel as though he's intentionally trying to destroy the monolithic ERP software industry that he helped pioneer, which I find very interesting. Rapid is one that's a relatively new challenger in the ERP in enterprise tech space, but I think in years to come, you'll see Rapid move up our top 10 list of AI-enabled technologies. But in the meantime, with that being said, that's enough to land Rapid at number 9 on our list. Coming in at number 8 is a company called ServiceNow. ServiceNow is not a traditional ERP system or a complete ERP system in the same way some of the others in our top 10 list are, but ServiceNow is used by a lot of customer-facing processes and organizations. So it's used often for customer service and creating cases and tickets with customers. It's also used by a lot of larger internal IT departments. So when IT departments try to track their help desk tickets, ServiceNow is oftentimes the platform that's used for that. And ServiceNow is really a good product to leverage AI capabilities just simply because of the mass amounts of data that it captures at the customer level. So they've built learned language models that are specific to HR, IT service management, and other functions. So they're also out acquiring AI providers as well and organically creating a lot of AI capabilities. So all that's enough to land ServiceNow at number 8 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 7 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies is Oracle NetSuite. And Oracle NetSuite is actually one of the top contenders in the small and mid-market, much like Odoo that we talked about earlier in this video. But one thing I like about NetSuite in its AI capabilities is not just the fact that they're developing these AI capabilities that can help with financial closes, customer order processing, supply chain, cash flow forecasting, and other functions, is the fact that NetSuite is a native cloud and SaaS solution, which really lends itself well to the use of AI and the adoption of AI. A lot of these legacy systems that are in our top 10 list weren't built for the cloud. So in some cases, these companies have not yet migrated their full set of capabilities over to the cloud, but NetSuite has always been in the cloud. So they have the maturity of a product that can really support and be supported by AI capabilities. So with all that being said, Oracle NetSuite lands at number 7 in our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in number 6 of our top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Workday. And Workday is not a complete ERP system on its own. It handles a lot within the world of human capital management, financials, and some basic inventory management, but not the full suite of ERP capabilities that a lot of ERP vendors provide. But Workday is investing very heavily in AI capabilities within those areas that it competes. So for example, when it comes to talent acquisition, Workday has embedded AI and created some predictive talent acquisition capabilities, which is very interesting, and even bringing AI to the HR function, which isn't something you always think about as a common use case for AI, but it is something that Workday is focused on. Workday has also invested in AI capabilities on the financial side of things when it comes to financial forecasting and planning, the financial close process, et cetera. They've really invested heavily in some AI capabilities there as well. So Workday could be a great option for those of you that might be focusing on technology that's going to enable a process and finance-driven type of organization or focus within your digital transformation. So all that is enough to land Workday at number 6 in our top 10 list of AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 5 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Oracle Cloud ERP. And actually, to be clear, it's not just Oracle Cloud ERP. It also includes Oracle Cloud Supply Chain Management and Human Capital Management. Those two functions fit within the umbrella of ERP. But Oracle has invested heavily in AI in all 3 areas. And where Oracle has an advantage is, first of all, they have a large client base, and they're well established in the ERP space. So that customer base provides a high volume of data to train AI models and to provide better AI capabilities to its customer base. So Oracle has embedded Oracle Fusion AI within all of its
cloud applications as cloud products. Oracle also has the advantage of having industry focus across different industry verticals, so AI is able to leverage and learn from all these different industry capabilities that Oracle plays in. So all that is enough to land Oracle Cloud ERP at number 5 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 4 on our list of AI-enabled ERP systems is Microsoft Dynamics 365. More specifically, Microsoft D365 with Copilot. And Microsoft has a distinct advantage in the AI arms race because they're an investor and part owner of OpenAI, and they also have Copilot, which draws from the OpenAI model. So that's really powerful in that most people that are using Microsoft Dynamics 365, and even people that are just using Microsoft Office 365, have access to Copilot, which is a very powerful AI tool set. Within Microsoft Dynamics 365, however, its AI tools are used to automate certain functions within supply chain management, financial close and reporting, and CRM as well. Copilot is also embedded within a number of different workflows within Dynamics 365, allowing customers a lot of flexibility to how they use AI within their business processes. So all that is enough to land Microsoft Dynamics 365 at number 4 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 3 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Salesforce. Now, Salesforce may not be your traditional ERP system. Most people think of Salesforce as a CRM-only solution, but within Salesforce, you also have other third-party applications that can round out that CRM offering and provide more of an ERP-like experience. And this is done through the Force platform. But the reason I like Salesforce and the reason it's ranked high on our list is because they've embedded AI throughout so many different parts of their product using Einstein AI, which is their AI model that they've embedded within Salesforce. So where Salesforce is particularly strong as it relates to AI is within customer service, marketing, and the sales processes. So Salesforce has AI that are deeply embedded throughout workflows, throughout the product. It's not an add-on. Even though there's a separate product called Einstein, it's actually embedded throughout much of the Salesforce product. So all that is enough to land Salesforce at number 3 on our top 10 list of AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 2 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is SAP S/4HANA. And not too long ago, S/4HANA rolled out its AI companion called Joule. And the unique thing about Joule is not only is it embedded in the various processes and workflow across supply chain management, manufacturing, and financials and other areas of strength within S/4HANA, but it's also a conversational AI tool, which is very powerful for the average end user who may not want to learn all the different transactions and menus that SAP is accustomed for. SAP is such a big, massive system, it's oftentimes easy to get lost in the details of where to find certain information or how to complete certain transactions. So Joule is a great way for the average person to be able to converse with SAP rather than looking for information within SAP. So Joule is a very powerful tool in that regard. The other way that SAP has a distinct advantage in the AI arms race is that they have such a big customer base, over 30,000 customers that have already opted into sharing the results with Joule and with the SAP AI models, to where customers are learning from each other, or their AI models are learning from one another. So that gives SAP a distinct advantage when you think about some of these big, massive companies that are starting to deploy S/4HANA along with AI. So all of that is enough to land SAP at number 2 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 1 of our top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies is a product that is not an ERP system at all. It's a product called Palantir. And Palantir is a product that takes other systems and ties them together and creates customized workflows, AI, reporting, and other things that allow you to get the benefit of new technology without necessarily having to rip out and replace all of your legacy systems. So Palantir is something that's very commonly used, especially in government, healthcare, and even some manufacturing now. They're moving more into the private sector as well. And they really specialize in companies that have tons of data they've accumulated over the years, but they're using older technologies that they just haven't been able to replace or haven't had the appetite to replace. And so what Palantir has done is they've created a tool set that sort of sits on top of a lot of those legacy systems and gives you AI capabilities and integrations and workflows that make it feel like you've got new technology, but
beneath the surface, you're still using a lot of the old legacy technologies, which might be okay depending on what technology you're referring to. Palantir has invested heavily in AI for data modeling, integration, and even predictive analytics and other types of AI-enabled processes that span across multiple functions and industries. So all that is enough to land Palantir at number 1 of our top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies.
So that was our YouTube video that I posted on my YouTube channel where I talk about the top 10 systems, ERP systems that are leveraging AI. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that, Darian?
Yeah, definitely a very interesting list for sure. Before we get into maybe diving into, more of what positions different companies were ranked at, why is this ranking important right now? And what should companies be paying attention to when it comes to AI inside of ERP?
Yes, good question. Well, first of all, I'd say that it's important because every vendor is talking about AI and every vendor is investing heavily in AI. We had the tagline or the headline earlier that Epicor, for example, is doubling down on AI. I'd say every vendor out there is alleging to double down on AI, and they probably are. But the question is, who's got the best results? Where are we seeing actual customers using the technology and that sort of thing? And which vendor has the platform and the customer base that's going to be best suited to enable faster and more effective AI adoption? And that's why some of the incumbent vendors that in other rankings I might not rank so high, like SAP S/4HANA, for example, that's an example of one that in other rankings for other topics, I don't rank S/4HANA as high as we did in this ranking because SAP has such scale. They've got so many customers using S/4HANA, a lot more to come too, by the way, because less than half of their customers have started the journey to S/4HANA. So there's a lot more to come, but they've got, from last I heard, I think they had about 30,000 customers that are on S/4HANA that have also consented to share their data with the AI model. And that's just a mass amount of information from really big companies that are very effective in training that AI model. So you have to look at a lot of things like integration of the system, cloud adoption, how many customers they have, because that is going to create a better AI model. Now, I will say that it is going to water down any sort of competitive advantage those companies have, because now everyone's training the same AI model that's going to have the same capabilities now, that's going to be spread across 30,000 customers as of now. So, that's a whole nother question, but that's a whole nother can of worms for discussion. I have some pretty strong thoughts on that we'll table for some other time. But for the time being, though, that gives SAP a leg up in terms of their capabilities and ability to use AI. Now, whether or not it's right for the customers long-term, that's a whole nother conversation. But I think to answer your question, the incumbents tend to have an advantage largely because they've got such a big customer base, largely because there's so much data that can be shared, so much integrated solutions that they're offering. So this is an area where I think the traditional big name vendors are going to have a pretty distinct advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting into kind of the list, I want to talk about the number 1 spot because it maybe will come to a surprise to some people, I guess, since it's not, I guess, a traditional ERP, I guess you could say. Why was it ranked number 1?
Yeah, so Palantir was, number 1 on the list. And the reason that was, even though some might say it's not a true ERP system, is because it provides ERP-like capabilities and workflows driven by AI first. And so Palantir had been investing in AI long before it became such a big buzzword. They were doing a lot of big government agency type implementations and using AI to, help train, militaries for, their next moves and stuff. And in fact, one of the comments that I get on any video I publish about Palantir, I get a lot of people that are interested in the technology, but I get a lot of political comments about how Palantir is supporting fascism and that sort of thing because they do so much work with big militaries throughout the world. And the reason I bring this up is because militaries are trusting that the AI models that Palantir has can help them become smarter and more, have more of an advantage, from a military planning perspective. So that's why, I think the maturity of their AI technology is there, and they work with some really big entities throughout the world. Mostly, a lot of it's been in the public sector, but they're moving into the private sector pretty aggressively as well. So I think that gives them an advantage, and just the fact that they can tie together so many of these disparate legacy systems and data sets that can train the model too. Those are some of the big reasons why. And their software is a little bit newer and more modern, whereas some of the older legacy systems are still trying to catch up to get their platforms to the point where they can actually leverage some of these AI tools that they're developing.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Super interesting for sure. I think it's like you said, we don't know. The list could change next month or it could remain the same, but I'm interested to see kind of how it develops even towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and also I'd love to hear what people think right now. What do you think of this top 10 listing? Would you rank someone else higher or lower than what I have? Would you add someone to the list, take someone off? Especially if you have experience using any of the AI tools within these ERP vendors. I'd love to hear your feedback because it's changing really quickly. So I don't proclaim to have all the answers, but love to hear your feedback in the comments. So good stuff. Well, thanks for another great episode, Darian, and thanks to the audience for the great questions, and thank you to Raj for being here to join us. If you'd like to learn more about Third Stage Consulting, go to thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about how we can help with your transformation journey, or if you just like to compare notes or brainstorm ideas informally, I'm happy to do that as well. So be sure to reach out to me if you'd like. Show is produced by Major Tom Productions. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of that. And you can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. So we'll see you next week. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
Ground control.